Welcome to the Old Mac Gang Podcast, or OMG. It's a podcast, it's a vodcast, I don't know what you want to call it, with a panel of longtime Mac Apple users who want to discuss the most relevant apps and services to age-seasoned users. I'm Marty Gensius, an Apple enthusiast and podcaster. I'm a 67-year-old age-seasoned user who's collected a great group of friends who, some of them have been traveling, have been around, and so we've had kind of a shorter show. This time we've got everybody in town or everybody in front of their computer, which is kind of cool. And what we'll talk about is Apple and the different Apple products and services for age-seasoned users. Today's topic is going to be about talking tech, voice control, Siri, those kind of primarily dictation tools and how we can do that, because that's now built into the operating system. So let's see who we have on the panel today.
Hey, I'm Chris. I'm a 78-year-old retiree here in Tucson, Arizona, a happy member of the Tucson Mac User Group. I've been around the Mac since 1984 and hung out with the user groups for about 9 years and had a chance to work for Apple for almost another 9 years, and then did some university IT. And now I'm retired. I use a M1 Mac Mini, iPhone 16 Pro Max, Apple Watch Series 6, and a 9th generation iPad. Gary?
I'm Gary. Last Tuesday, I was 88 years old. Had a little birthday party for me. And I live with Marty and Peter in Northeast Ohio. And I use everything that they use. Peter?
I'm Peter, and I'm 72 and from Bay Village in Northeast Ohio. Computers have been a part of more than 3/4 of my life. They've evolved dramatically, and they've infiltrated ever so many more parts of all of our lives. I'm an Apple guy now, who loves learning from and sharing with others, especially this old gang right here.
First of all, I'd like to say happy birthday to both Gary and Chris. I am still 70-something and back here in Tucson after Macstock and a visit to Wisconsin for visiting friends and relatives.
Okay, so there is a bit of news. It just came out today. I hope you guys managed to take a look at this article. We don't know enough about it yet, but it is AppleCare One is a discussion that's going on, and AppleCare introduces AppleCare One, streamlining coverage into a single plan with what they say is an incredible value. So the idea here is, if any of you use AppleCare, to use AppleCare or AppleCare Plus, I should say, if you have AppleCare Plus on your devices, there's going to be, instead of paying separately for each device by month or paying separately, some of them you can do annual, or most of them you can do an annual charge for, you can combine up to 3 devices into one price of $19.99 a month. And I've got the link with the page on it that will give our viewers information about it. You can cover multiple devices at one great price of $19.99 a month. And you can add already owned eligible devices. In some cases, if they're recent, it's not going to be a problem. In some cases, if they're extensive or older, they're going to want you to do some type of either remote test on it with them, or bring it into an Apple store for them to evaluate the device. Is anybody have any comments on this or any interest in this at all?
Well, I think there are a couple of things, Marty. First of all, it follows on the heels of the Apple One bundle for the Apple services. And the thing that has made that worthwhile over the years is that if I price it out for what I use, I end up getting something for free, like the arcade games, which the only thing I use is the Mahjong game, which is I rarely have time for, but it's a lot of fun. But when you add up the various components of iCloud and music and news and everything else, I save money by having the bundle. So transfer that over to the concept to AppleCare. I don't know how they're going to add incremental new products, but I'm probably won't update my iPhone, but I'd keep it on there, and I think I paid $267 for that AppleCare Plus plan. And so it's just a matter of doing the math. Is it going to make sense to you? And is it going to be economically viable where maybe, you get a new pair of earbuds and, your AirPods, and, you want to have the loss coverage, because who doesn't with AirPods, right? And so, it's all a function of, does it make sense economically or not? And for people, I think for a lot of people, they'll find they can get more coverage, and it may be just a little bit more. They could also cover the laptop in addition to, or something. I mean, it's all in the numbers, so we'll see how it works out.
Yeah. Any other comments, guys?
Well, I'm interested in pricing it out to see if it does save me money. Apple One does save me money, so I like it. And in this case, once I look at what products I have that I have insured with them, we'll see if it also saves me money.
Yeah. I don't know, Gary or Bob, do you use Apple Care Plus on any of your devices?
I have AppleCare Plus on my phone because it's something that's so important to me, and it's new enough. So I purchased AppleCare Plus for my phone. Pretty much everything else I have has gone out of warranty, and I'm not as worried about it as the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why, but I've been reluctant to buy AppleCare, and I really have been fortunate not to need it. And just recently, I've been using, when I need to, the Genius Bar or just to search. So so that's really, I can't get enthusiastic about AppleCare.
Yeah, my problem is the price thing. I went through tonight to figure out, because it says it will cover up to 3 devices, and I'll find this out tomorrow, like everybody else. It says up to 3 devices for $19.99 a month. Well, AppleCare Plus on the Vision Pro is $25 a month. So are they going to, or you pay an annual fee? I think I paid it annualized to get a little cheaper. So are they going to cover something that's $25 a month as one of the 3 items that you have, and it will be at a set price of $20 a month? So I have to put my accountant hat on. Gary, you probably do better than I on this, but figure that this might be an enticement for folks who don't have AppleCare to get all of their products covered for, or AppleCare Plus, all of their products covered for $99, or excuse me, $19.99 a month. But then I look at my product list that's being covered by AppleCare Plus. They say in this announcement that any additional piece can be added on for $5.99. So I look at the phone that I've got. I look at the fact that I have a Vision Pro. I've got a 2 MacBook Airs. I've got a MacBook Pro. I have a Mac Studio. I have a Mac Mini, and I have 2 phones. So if I'm going to cover 3 of those for $20, I'm picking the Vision Pro. I'm probably picking my Pro headset, and probably picking as a third my iPad Pro. because all of that will be the best bang for the buck that I'll get. And then I'll make decisions about, am I going to cover the phones now for $5.99 a month instead of $9.99 a month? The 16 Pro Max is $9.99 a month. So it again is trying to figure out the numbers. And I looked through some of the devices that I still own, and some of them I just kind of said, no, I don't need AppleCare on this. I don't need warranty on it anymore. I've got some iPad or home, the mini speakers. I have a couple of mini speakers that are on the list. Don't need them. Don't need them covered. Not going to worry about them. I also have a large HomePod. Don't need it right now. Not going to worry about coverage. So I'm going to start to think about what devices that are on the list that I'm not going to worry about anymore. I have a iPad mini. Probably not going to worry about coverage on that anymore. When it runs out, or if I'm paying it on a monthly, I'll probably drop that. So it could be interesting. The only thing I can think of is that there are people who have multiple devices and aren't taking the benefit of having AppleCare Plus, and this bundling might be a way to entice them into using it. I'll have more to report tomorrow because I'll be taking a look at what I can do with what I've got. And if they go, oh, hey, you've got a Vision Pro, would you like to cancel that contract that you have and have it put on coming, just put it onto the AppleCare Pro Plus, whatever it is, or the AppleCare One, instead of paying the money that I'm paying it that way. So we'll see what happens with it, but probably report more on it in the next episode that we have of Old Mac Gang. Let's talk. Yeah, Chris?
Bob, one last thing, Barty, that a real life example, when Apple opened up the theft and loss coverage, it was more than the previous coverage, but people started to really think about it. And my real life example is some old friends from Perth, Australia, were in London last summer. And unfortunately, the wife left her iPhone behind in a cafe, went back, and of course it was gone. And when they went to the Apple store, long story short, they didn't have the AppleCare. And so they had to buy another one, which wasn't another problem, except that Australia is on a very different time zone. And they were having trouble with the credit card going through, but the bank wasn't open yet in Perth. And so that got into all sorts of rigmarole. And all it takes is one of those events to make your theft loss coverage look pretty cheap. Marty?
I have theft loss on mine too, and I noticed that because I went through earlier tonight and tried to figure out what am I paying for and what am I paying for on what. I think I have theft loss on my Pro Max, 16 Pro Max, but I don't have it on my 16E. And thinking that's a risk that I'll take in terms of theft and loss on that phone, but I don't want to do it on my 16 Pro Max. So let's get to the topic for tonight, talking tech, voice control, Siri, and dictation tools. And we have some links that we've put in that are for our listeners or for our viewers that will be found in the show notes. And these links will give you all sorts of directions in terms of ways in which you can, that's the AppleCare One, ways in which you can use dictation on your phone and turn dictation on. So directions for that if you haven't been able to do that or haven't done it yet. And then there's also voice control commands on your iPhone. And these pages also have drop downs for different versions of iOS. So we're kind of concentrating on iOS here in tonight's episode, but it's not just iOS 18, but you'll find out more information here, say you're running iOS 17 and such. And then there's a good article by Wired, how to use voice typing on your phone. It covers Android as well as iOS. So you might want to look at that article. And then how to control your device using your voice in iOS 17 on your iPhone and iPad. And it tells you how to set up accessibility and how to be able to do that if you want to have some of the accessibility features that are part of this. So let's go ahead and go to the group. And I think Peter's the start on this one. And the question is, do you use voice controls or dictation on your phone?
Yes, I use both, but mainly I use dictation. I use dictation every day on all my devices. I found it reliable enough. Okay, it's not perfect, but with some minor corrections, I can pretty much dictate what I need to say. I use it for capturing light bulb moments. That is, things I want to remember, but I think if I don't get them down if I don't get them captured, I'm going to forget them. When I'm on my Mac or my iPad with a keyboard, I hit the F1 key and I can dictate into any text field. I use the lower right microphone icon on my iPhone and iPad to trigger dictation, again, in any kind of text field. And I use a watch complication to record stuff to drafts on my Apple Watch. So Drafts is a third-party app that I use. It's very much like Apple Notes. Marty, we put it in the show notes. It does way more than what I use it for, but I use it for two things: capturing stuff in a hurry and then finding the stuff I captured. The two examples of things I might capture, probably the number one is URLs. If I have a URL, I use the send to box to send it to drafts, and I get something. And if I search, I get a list on the left, and I can toggle through the things that match my search and see in the right-hand panel the notes pop up, and I can identify the one I like. The other thing I do is I create what I guess I would call bookmarklets. So a lot of times when I'm on hikes or walks, I listen to audiobooks, and I'm going to be discussing them at a book group. So when I hear something that if I were at home, I might put in a tab or bend the page, or some people might use highlighter, which I don't like using, but I might. I hit the button to dictate, and I dictate into drafts the name of the book and then a key phrase that'll help me find that. And then I would go into drafts later and I search for the name of the book, and I have all of my bookmarklets, and I then mark it up in an ebook where I don't mind highlighting because I can turn the highlights on or off. I also use a couple of commands, usually when I'm walking. So if I'm walking and my hands are busy, I say S-Lady volume up or S-Lady volume down, and that adjusts my volume. I might say S-Lady forward 60 seconds or S-Lady rewind 15 seconds. And those are the commands I tend to use. I also dictate to CarPlay. I send and receive text, and I initiate phone calls. But I find dictation very nice on all my Apple devices.
Yeah, everybody can understand why Peter's a wonderful teacher, which means I'm going to download the show notes, which I have, and follow his instructions. I'm starting, as I said, using dictation, along with Chris telling me about Proofreader for messages and for my emails and Word documents. So, Chris, that's my take and appreciation for all that Peter has taught me.
I just want to mention drafts. We do have the link in the show notes, Peter. I use similar ones and it's unfortunate I have so much material in there that I can't unsubscribe from them because it's got an archive of some really good material in it. But I also use Ulysses, which is another one that's been around for a long time. And a real popular one is Bear. And I haven't really delved too much into Bear, but that's a another good sort of quick capture, quick writing app if you need to get something down. I just wanted to mention that. And I'll put links for that into the show notes too. Chris, you're next.
Yeah. So dictation's had a kind of a interesting history on the Mac side. Dragon Naturally Speaking was out there on the PC for a long time, and they had kind of a novel approach of breaking down the English language into 73 different phonemes or sounds, and they walked you through a 5-minute reading thing. And the way you made each of those phonemes later allowed them to put together a speech to text product that was roughly 93% accurate, which is apparently was the threshold for the blind, that anything less than that was not usable. And so we had Mac Speech, and then that sort of gravitated into Dragon Naturally Speaking for the Mac. And then around 2020, Apple started bringing out their own version of dictation. And, it's really gotten good, bottom line. And hence the reason I mentioned the history is for us old-time users, it wasn't all that good until about 2020. But, trust us, it really works now, and it's pretty darn accurate. Still not as accurate as, say, ChatGPT if you're using the microphone there for some reason. But, hey, it's accurate enough. Now, my one problem, I use it all the time like Peter, but my one problem is, you could probably tell listening to me that I'm a little bit verbose, right? So when I'm dictating an email, it might be twice as long as it needs to be because I'm talking and using more words. And the good news here, as Gary mentioned, is we can now take the Apple Intelligence writing tools and select any text pretty much anywhere and run proofread on it. And in the process of that, you can trim it down in several different ways. And so this might be something for users to really kind of think about. I know it would help me in terms of make more concise, I think is one of their choices, or make more formal or more informal. So, applying these two tools together might really be a win scenario for a lot of us seasoned users where, the keyboard just isn't working the way it used to be. And do we need a new keyboard, or is it our fingers, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I got to tell you, Dragon Naturally Speaking brings back some memories for me. I think it came out about the time that I was making the switch over to Macs, and I was really disappointed I couldn't find anything at that time in the Mac platform. And it was so damned expensive back then. And at least, my income's changed over the years. And so it could have, what appears to be expensive back then, maybe would not be so expensive now. But so many of these dictation functions are now built into the operating systems in all sorts of ways. But when I saw Dragon Naturally Speaking, and I might have gotten a copy of it to run it on my machine, I thought, this is how I'm going to write all my papers. I'm never going to have to type again. And not the case. And, it had its speed issues, it's had its performance issues, let alone some accuracy issues. So it just seemed like a lot of work, and I went back to typing. Bob, what about you?
I use dictation for messages when I'm in CarPlay. In fact, as I was traveling through Iowa last Saturday, I noticed that a lot of the corn had its tassels. And I sent a message about that off to some friends. Unfortunately, the S lady thought I said castles with a C. And I got some funny replies back to that until I realized what had happened and redid the message to say that it really was tassels. That's what I meant. Huh. The other place I have been using this feature is like with the Apple TV when searching for programs to watch. But I don't do much with voice control other than perhaps asking for a light to go on or off with either the S Lady or the Amazon Echo. Marty?
I think I think dictation is a great tool, and particularly for age seasoned users. I'm a little embarrassed because I rarely use it. Um, my wife Aileen uses it for a majority of her text messages. Like you did, Bob. And she'll speak out her text message instead of typing it in. For people who have visual acuity issues, that makes it a lot easier for them to do that. On a recent trip to Chicago, my sister has a tendency to write these, you know, 5 paragraph. And Gary met her when in our trip to Chicago. She writes these like 5 paragraph text messages, and she's got a lot to say, and she's very kind, conveys a lot of thank yous, and she's very polite, great human being, and I just can't figure out how she does that with her hands. And I think Aileen and I, the last time before the trip with Gary to Macstock, Aileen showed her how to use dictation for messages. So it might even get more dangerous at this point. But just for messages alone, I think it's a great use for age season users. I rarely use it. And I probably should use it more often instead of going, I got to put my phone down. I got to go upstairs, go on the computer, and I can type it out on the computer much easier than I can do with my fat little thumbs on the thing. I should just do the dictation piece and get used to it. Where I use dictation the most is probably in the car and CarPlay. And, like Bob, doing messages while I'm driving or returning messages while I'm driving without distracting me. Of course, I'm not going to get a keyboard out and do it. But I can do that pretty easily with the CarPlay screen that I have. And the S lady, Sheila, will read the messages to me and then ask me if I want to reply. And I will say yes. And she'll go, what do you want to say to Fran? And I'll put the reply in. It might not be accurate. I don't care. I might be saying castles instead of tassels, but Fran gets it. She knows I'm talking about tassels and not about castles. So, but it's functional, and that's pretty cool. So I use it most in CarPlay. I should be using more of the directions that Sheila can do for telling me to play this or play that. I struggle with the podcast app all the time, the Apple podcast app with CarPlay, because it doesn't give me the latest. It gives me the one that I last listened to, which I don't want to listen to anymore. I want to listen to the new one. So I've got to work out some of those directions that you can use, voice directions that you can use to effectively. But right now it's mainly messages and it's mainly through CarPlay. So next question, what features using voice controls are you looking forward to trying or wish that Apple would create?
Well, I would like to use the modes, so spelling mode and command mode. And after reading the instructions you posted into the show notes, I tested a couple things today. I need to get them down, but I use a modicum of eccentric words when I speak. So there are words like tassel and castle that I will confuse the S lady with. I did find today that if I start talking using more normal words and then get to a tough one, if I then say spelling mode and then start to spell it out and then say dictation mode and keep dictating, it does what I'm intending. And in the past, when I've just spelled a word in the middle of dictation, I've had a mess that required a lot of correction. So I plan to work with that. And I also want to mess around with command mode more. I have been experimenting for the last month or so with some of the instructions during CarPlay to say things like, using Apple Maps, give me directions home, or using Google Maps, give me directions to a place that I know is only available in Google Maps, or using Waze, whatever. So I found those keywords and I'm starting to get them down for what I might want to use when I'm, asking CarPlay to do things hands free. And I'd love a little thesaurus or lexicon for how to do that. There's probably one somewhere. I just haven't found it yet.
Well, I almost want to get a new car because I don't have CarPlay. And that trip with Marty to Chicago, and I hadn't met Fran before, but it was such an enjoyable ride and a conversation that we had on the interstate. And I'm sure everybody who has a car with CarPlay and a phone is using it. And it was so, in a way, safe for Marty to be when he's driving and having a conversation with Fran, who was, it just made it. And then we had a meal together with Fran and her husband, and it just made it wonderful. I'm going to check out some of the stuff that Peter just mentioned but otherwise, I'm not really doing much than just on my Mac and phone. Chris?
Yeah, I'm not much of a voice control user. I understand the concept, and I think it's a wonderful thing for people who have limitations and challenges with their hands, and that can be a lifesaver. So I look forward to seeing what Apple's going to be doing with the all the new operating systems in the fall, any new developments and improvements, and especially around maybe the Apple Vision Pro, because that's a product that could be just wonderful for seniors. But I know for a personal friend who had some hand issues, they had a heck of a time getting it set up for him because the Vision Pro didn't, the setup didn't work very well because of his hand tremors. And so, but I think in the long run, Vision Pro could be wonderful for that. And how it's going to influence the operating system kind of above and beyond just the look and feel of the operating system, which we all know about with the new glass interface being like the Vision Pro, but also what functionality may come from that. And the other thing I will probably do is check in with ChatGPT occasionally and say, hey, what's new with the accessibility features, et cetera, in the new operating systems, which is a great way to do that.
In maps in CarPlay, I really would like to have the ability to pause navigation and resume navigation. This is something I can do with podcasts. I can say pause playback and resume playback, and I do that a lot. Also at MacStock, there was a woman, Chris Cook, who did a presentation, and she was blind. And I'm sure that she uses voice control a lot more than probably all of us put together because that's how she interacts with her devices. Marty?
Yeah, Bob, I am having a battle with navigation in CarPlay right now, at least Apple Maps. I'm having a hard time getting things from my phone to mirror into CarPlay, and then to try and put them in by hand onto the display is a little bit more of a challenge. So right now, Maps is not my friend with CarPlay. So I get that. I would like to see it pause. Navigation will nag you if you decide to get off the road a little bit to do something about getting back on the road. So yeah, I feel your pain with that. I would like to probably see, and I think we'll see this more in the future, more third-party apps integration for dictation or voice controls. And Apple's kind of opening up its APIs, is interested in getting third-party apps to be able to use the interfaces better. And we're seeing that particularly in Apple Intelligence. that they're setting out a whole group of APIs so third-party apps can integrate easily into Apple intelligence, and it being kind of ubiquitous. So I don't have to think um, I'm doing something in Fantastical, and I don't have to tell the S lady that she needs to do this in Fantastical. She should know that Fantastical is open, and that's the context that I'm asking it to do. So a little bit smarter to know what I'm doing instead of me having to take it through all of the steps, particularly if I'm working on one app and I'd like to see something done with that app using voice command. So that's my suggestions in terms of future. Any other notes or things that folks would like to talk about? Yeah, Peter.
Just one quick thing. When I've been at the Apple Store seeing demos, I just was thinking as everyone was talking that the demonstrations I've seen of dictations has often been to locate a setting. Now, going into settings and searching for a setting has never been a thing that I'm eager to do because I don't think they're particularly well organized and I don't think the search works particularly well. But it appeared to me that the S Lady search may be a little better than the one just in the search bar. So I'm gonna experiment with that now that I recall that.
Yeah, Chris.
Marty, I wonder if some of your issues might have been because the CarPlay is with the iOS 26 beta. And also, I'm happy to report that my previous issue from a couple of shows ago with the S Lady and Apple Maps was resolved. I tried it out a couple of weeks ago, and I'm no longer able to replicate the problem I was seeing before. So I think it was during one of the updates to iOS 18. So what happens in the betas, we'll find out. But
Yeah, it might been. I've been mucking around with my two phones. So I've been usually running the 16E and basically loving it. But when I initiate a call on the 16E, it doesn't come from my primary number. So even my family doesn't know it's me. So that's been an issue. Even though I forward the number from my Pro Max to my 16E, I initiate a call, it's coming off the system that I'm working with. So that's been confusing to them. Then my son decided, wanted to ask me if I had a good camera. I said, well, the best camera I have is on my 16 Pro Max. So I started to shift everything off the 16E back to the 16 Pro Max. And all my watches were set up on the 16E. So then I have to switch the watches back over. This is a word to the wise. Don't get two phones. It's just don't get two phones. So there's been a lot of setup changes. And then the last couple of days, I've had to do some trips to help somebody out in terms of going to the emergency room of a hospital I'm not familiar with and the directions to get to it, and just could not do it on CarPlay. So it's probably all of the different permutations and combinations of stuff that I've been doing that's making CarPlay difficult for me. Any other notes or any other things of question or concern? All right. Then you can email us.
Bob's got a question, Marty.
Bob's got a question. Okay.
It's not really a question, Marty. It's the fact that you have Mac Stock Conference and Expo listed under announcements. And I would just like to do a plug for the Mac Stock Digital Pass. If you go to Mac Stock, you get a digital pass automatically. But if you are unable to go to Mac Stock and you would like to enjoy and learn from many of the presentations that were done, including Marty's, you can purchase a digital pass and save 20% with the coupon code TMUG20, as in Tucson Macintosh User Group. Mike Potter joined our meeting in May, I think it was, and he gave us coupon codes for discounts. So but I didn't hear of anybody else who had a digital pass coupon code. So if you want a digital pass, TMUG20, and you'll save 20%. That does it.
Okay. Well, if you would like to get in touch with us, you can email us at thepodtalknetwork@gmail.com. And I was encouraged by other folks in this group. I'm looking at wanting to do a movies of the 40s and 50s podcast. So if anybody here is a movie lover of the 40s and 50s like I am, I'm not sure it will be. I don't think I'm looking to gather a group of people who are willing to kind of come on and talk about a movie that they find particularly special. If they want to come on more than once and be part of a group like we have with the OMG, that's cool too. But right now, I'm just trying to get folks who would be interested in coming on and being sort of a co-host or multiple hosts if we have multiple folks who are willing to do that. So I'm trying to organize that. That was something that came out of MacStock for me. Basically, someone said, "What's your next big project with Ecamm?" And that popped into my head and came out of my mouth before it actually went through my brain. So if you're interested in that, you can email me or email us at thepodtalknetwork@gmail.com, and we'll start a conversation, and I'll gather a group of people to kind of make this thing happen. We appreciate feedback from our viewers and listeners. Your feedback helps us tailor programs for you, the H-seasoned users like us, who want to continue using their Macs and making your life more enjoyable. You can also find out about our other shows at thepodtalk.net, the website thepodtalk.net, and you'll find about Vision Profiles, you'll find about the Old Mac Gang, you'll find about the show that I do with my son called Gear Up and Go. All of that information you can find at thepodtalk.net. So let's wrap for this episode. Our next live episode will be on Wednesday, July 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time through YouTube, where you can watch this crew at youtube.com/@oldmacgang. You can always pick us up with the podcast or the video later on from YouTube or any of your other podcast catchers or services that you use. You can find us as the Old Mac Gang. Please share this with your friends and other Mac user groups to join with us as part of the Old Mac Gang. Our music bed is by Philip Gross, Marrakesh, courtesy of the Free Music Archive, part of the Creative Commons. And you can find out more information, as I said, at thepodtalk.net. Thanks to the group, Chris, Peter, Gary, and Bob. And thank you for being part of the Old Mac Gang. We'll see you next time.